Guess what, people? It's 7 o'clock. Let's kick this off. Welcome to Tribe Talk. Of course, it's not working. There we go. Here's our purpose. Group of like-minded people getting together, having a little conversation, a little dialogue, because we have so many things in common. Don't know how that all happened, but really gets me to the next slide anyway. So just one caveat is that this is a independent conversation, regardless of who shows up, not sponsored by any organization, just a group of like-minded people. For those people who are new, please quickly read down through the etiquette. What's important, what would help out everybody a lot, as I admit, John Sears, is if on your screen name you put your first and last name and where you're from, so that everybody knows who's talking and we can kind of get an idea of who is here and where everybody comes from. Lurkers are welcome. You don't have to participate, although we wish and hope that you do. If you have technical difficulties, as Zoom gets bigger and everybody keeps using it more and more, sometimes we have technical issues. If you get kicked out, go ahead and come back in. We'll gladly admit you back into the talk. What we're having tonight, boy, I don't know why my screen is so slow to switch. Sarah Baranek on reflecting on resiliency, and then Ted Jenkins with overcoaching and possible solutions. Maybe we can get Ray to ask us a cool question and then some parting thoughts before we leave. With that, I would go ahead and invite Sarah to take over.
Okay, awesome. Just need access to share my PowerPoint.
You have access?
Now I do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, here we go. All right, so everyone should see my screen, hopefully. Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. So tonight I'll be talking about, so thank you, Dawn, for the opportunity to go ahead and present, and thank you everyone for your attention and your participation. Hopefully you'll learn something. So my presentation today is on reflecting on resiliency. So first question, what is resiliency? So it's defined as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. So this could be family, relationship problems, health problems, workplace, financial stressors. We've all been currently challenged to varying degrees with the current state of the nation. So it's kind of something to kind of think about as we go through this presentation. So, do you think it's nature, genetic, or nurture, environmental? So resiliency, do you think it's a personality trait that some people possess, or do you think it's a learned skill? Why or why not?
Sarah, this is Dennis in St. Louis. For some people, I think the personality trait on resiliency, it depends on the person, what kind of person they are. And for other people, it may be a learned skill, or maybe for everybody it could be a learned skill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both.
A little bit of both? Okay. And what would you say that?
Why? Because I think it is. I think that, you know, there's a certain amount of sort of your upbringing and your, you know, genetic disposition towards being, you know, being able to adapt. And also, you know, how the others, you know, and then the environment that you grew up in and that you were involved in, that you know, you learn that from, you know, your elders, you know, your parents, your grandparents, aunts, uncles, you know. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Very cool. Anyone else have any thoughts?
Yeah, Mark in Arizona. I would think it's a lot of both. I think that at the core, resiliency is something that's inherent. It's something that some people have more of than others. I wouldn't say people don't have it, but having the ability to bounce back and the ability to improvise and innovate is one thing, but having the will and determination to really carry it forward, often without support, is something that's learned. I think is learned. You learn to capitalize on your ability.
Yeah, those are all excellent points, and throughout this, each of those points that you all have brought up will be further enhanced. So there's some good news. It can be learned. It's like building a muscle. It takes time and intentionality. It's actually pretty ordinary and not extraordinary. So we're each born with a certain level of it, but it's through experience, and the more challenges you have and how you react to them is where you build that muscle. So for example, you all think of 9/11, response that many Americans had to the terrorist attacks, their individual efforts to rebuild and to adapt and be flexible just shows you how it's within all of us to be able to build it. All right, here's some time to reflect. So what are some examples of situations where you've had to demonstrate resiliency in your life?
Sarah, I think resiliency right now with the COVID-19 virus, the last 2 months, pretty much everybody that's been stuck at home, we've had to be resilient. And how much has it driven us crazy a little bit, or try to maintain our composure for the most part? That probably applies to everybody around the country.
Yep. Anyone else?
Sarah, Dave in Nebraska. I think the time I've had to be the most resilient in my life was a troublesome 18-year-old son.
Very cool. Anyone else?
Well, many of us have gone through unfortunate job changes that we really didn't want to have happen. So there's another example.
Very good. All right, so what about as a writer, coach, or trainer? What are some examples?
When the curriculum changes, this is Carol in St. Louis. For some, it was harder. For others, it was easier for them to adapt to the changes.
Yeah, and were all the coaches willing to upgrade themselves, or what did they end up doing?
There were those that decided not to coach anymore.
Yeah, so what would you say their level of resiliency was?
Lower than those of us that went ahead and embraced it.
Yeah. Do you think it was a choice they made, or was something they were kind of predetermined based on genetics?
For most, I think it was a choice that they made.
Yep, kind of goes back to that it's a learned skill. Excellent. So do you think that as a writer, coach, or trainer, you need a certain level of resiliency to be successful? Why or why not?
Well, this is Lynn in New York. There's tons of curveballs that can get thrown at you in any class or in any prep. I mean, the weather is just an example. You have to roll with it. And if you're gonna cry and go home with every little speed bump that you hit, you're not gonna be able to progress.
Also, Mark in Arizona, our students, novice riders and novice coaches as well, they learn differently, and sometimes it does take 5 or 6 or 7 or a dozen different tries to finally communicate. And without resiliency, you probably after a couple of tries, not necessarily give up, but just fall back on the last thing you said and just hope that they eventually figure it out.
Yep, that's perfect.
Sometimes,
Anyone else?
Sometimes a class can present a challenge in the student's struggles, and at other times the circumstances can present a challenge to the class, like adverse weather.
Yep. Or maybe dealing with level 3 crashes. Do you ever have one of those that make you question whether or not, this is for you? Anyone ever had one of those before?
I'm not sure what, this is Ron, I'm not sure what a level 3 crash is. Is that an ambulance one?
Yeah, that's an ambulance one. Our level 1 is a tip over. Level 2 is the student gets injured. Level 3 is we call 911.
I've never heard them categorized like that before.
Yeah.
Either have I, for that matter. Learn something new every day.
There you go. That's 2 for me today.
Awesome.
To answer your question, Sarah, yes. The first time I saw a level 3 incident, I wasn't even a coach yet. I was getting ready to go through my rider coach prep and just working as a range aide. And I seriously questioned whether this was going to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the answer turned out to be yes, it was for me. But
yeah, the only constant is change. You got to adapt and overcome to reach your goal, right? How often have we pushed through and adapted for our class, whether it was the student, the weather, whatever it was, to make sure, because we were just so dedicated to what our goal was, right? Awesome.
I think Carol in Missouri again. My first level 3, I made it through the class with the students, and I think I had my meltdown once I got home, and I called my mentor and said, hey, this is what happened today. Help me. And he talked me through it, and of course I've stuck with it, and I've had a couple since, and they don't get any easier, but I'm better at handling them.
That's an excellent example. I had one similarly. I was my first BRC class. There was 3 crashes. All the students, there's 3 students that went to the hospital, and my co-rider coach was injured. She got hit by a motorcycle and went flying. I was doing exercise 11 when that happened. And so
sounds like you got off to a crappy start in that respect.
yeah, she actually told me that I should consider quitting while I was ahead. I don't.
That support.
Well, resiliency. I don't give up and I don't quit. So there you go.
That's the same thing as a rider coach, resiliency. We've all had those classes from hell. We'd like to think the majority of them were all pretty good. And my first one this year was a great one, but I've had those classes that I wish I wasn't teaching that night.
They're character building classes, right?
There you go.
So since resiliency can be learned, how do you increase your current level of resiliency?
And this is Ron again. And then you have to consider.
I think you cut out there.
We didn't hear everything Ron said.
Yeah, Ron, you cut out. If you could go ahead and repeat that, that would be awesome. Okay, while Ron is getting his mic fixed, does anyone else have any ideas of how you can increase your current level?
Hey, Belinda from Tuscaloosa. I, much like riding a motorcycle, just practice it, right? Figure situations where you have to have the resilience, you have to build it up. So he said, just like anything else in life, if you're going to get better at it, you just need to put yourself in situations.
Yep, welcome and seek out that good stress, those good stress challenges. Yep. Any other ideas?
Resiliency for me, in a lot of ways, it could also have to do with how many classes you teach a year. If you're maybe one of those coaches that only teach 1 or 2, maybe 3 classes a year versus 5 or 6, your resiliency could be different there. Luckily for me, I'm retired and I teach somewhere between 20 and 25 classes a year.
Wow.
Whereas other people that I know that will remain nameless, and she knows who she is, does 35 to 40.
Wow.
Well,
I think part of it is, as your title implies, reflection and mindfulness about how you're handling the difficult situations in life or in coaching.
Yep, definitely.
I think a good way to be resilient is to, in advance, consider the what ifs and have a plan. What am I going to do if the storms get here before X o'clock today? Do we have enough rain gear? Do we have spare bikes? You know, and that's just using the weather as an example, but, you know, and that really isn't just on the coach level, but also on the admin level. Does my staff have enough stuff to do the job? You know, are we running out of this or running out of that? If they do run out of that, you know, could they make a copy someplace? You know, how would that work? So.
Exactly. So you're kind of encouraging the strategic risk taking to support this goal of growth, right?
Having a good support system is crucial too, I think, and that where you can count on people to help you through any issues that you may have. Just being able to talk to them and understand at least a minimum level of what you're being challenged with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being able to have feedback, you know, and that support structure, the tribe, you know, it's all very helpful. Perfect.
I would
All
like to hear a strategy that I had after the first 2 years that I became a rider coach many years ago. I felt like I had no mentorship in improving out there, and I wanted to raise my level of resiliency. So I went and became an EMT just so that I could have more resiliency and confidence out on the range. So it was a good strategy. It gave me a lot more confidence for the what ifs. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. Having that opportunity is extremely valuable. So kind of continuing on, one of the ways you can help, you know, kind of help build your resiliency is Carol Dweck. You've all heard of her growth mindsets. So there's the fixed mindset, which is external locus control, says that fate, bad luck, you don't have any control of your life, they avoid challenges, you know, the sky's falling, they're threatened by others, they're just like, everything's going to suck and I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna fail ultimately and I'm gonna be a failure for life. Versus the growth mindset, which is an internal locus control, you reframe the situation, you're in total control of how you interpret, perceive, and react. You embrace challenges. Challenges are fun. We love challenges. It's character building opportunity. We learn from criticism. We're inspired by others. We build each other up. Another to kind of, so growth implies an ending. So no more growth, limited, finite. So talking with Don, I did a little bit of research about Simon Sinek, and he has an infinite mindset. So we have growth. Yes, we grow to the point where we reach our goal, but then there's an infinite mindset where we reach our goals. Once met, we make new and evaluate and evolve those goals. So you never stop learning. And it kind of goes into like tab 5, that lifelong learner. So when you think of somebody who has like a fixed mindset, these are some of the words that you probably would think of. They're disengaged, they're stuck, they're unhappy, depressed, overwhelmed, bored, lost. And at certain points in our lives, we've all felt these at various times. It just, you don't want to get stuck there. But the goal is to have that growth, infinite mindset, much more positive, productive, inspired, connected, engaged, motivated. These are the words that help us to make us more resilient, more motivated, to help us reach our goals. But like every good thing, it takes practice. So here's another self-reflection opportunity. So what are some ways you can develop your own growth or infinite mindset?
Sarah, you talked about lifelong learning,
Mm-hmm.
and I have been engaged in several activities for most of my life that are exactly that type of activity, including rowing, the sport of crew.
Oh, I do crew too.
And Tai Chi. I've actually been teaching Tai Chi since before I became a rider coach.
That's awesome.
I work in engineering management, and engineers generally aren't resilient. They tend to be somewhat black and white, and I go out of my way to give them opportunities to think about doing things differently. And from time to time, when my boss throws something at me, instead of being negative about it, I try and think a minute before reacting, and in fact, maybe consider doing something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, encouraging that curiosity and encouraging whatever everyone else is curious about, encourage them to seek that out too, because where you go where you're curious at, that's where you start to grow. That's awesome.
Reading is another way, and asking people that you respect some recommendations on what to read.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of great resources that have been shared on here, and yeah, that is an awesome way to do that. So where do these types of connections and resiliency mindset come from out of the MSF material? And how can we emphasize that for everyone?
We need to be the examples and help mentor our newer rider coaches and help them to develop. And the way we respond to incidents on the range helps both our students and our fellow coaches.
That's awesome. Perfect.
And Dave, you're not black and white.
Why, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Carol spent a little time here in Nebraska when her husband was stationed here. The other thing I'm thinking of, Sarah, in the context of what you've asked here about the MSF material, just the fact, first of all, kudos to Dawn for even hosting this thing so we can talk to others and maybe learn something new. But the lifelong learning thing, I can't remember when Ray started talking about that, but if you embrace that as a concept and recognize that you don't know everything and you can learn something from everyone, I think that kind of typifies being resilient.
Awesome. Excellent points. Did anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's Mark in Arizona again. I think also the way you set your expectations going into class, when you look at the material in section 5 in the Rider Coach Guide, you see how incredibly dynamic a learning environment needs to be. And if your expectations are set too narrow, I don't know that narrow is the right word, I'm just at a loss at the moment, but if your expectations are maybe too defined and you don't have the class that you're expecting, you can create a more difficult situation for yourself. If your expectations are chosen so that they fit the situation that you're going into, whether it's with novices or management or even other coaches, maybe it reduces the need to be resilient because you're already open to a wider range of things happening.
Yep, you already have cultivated that growth infinite mindset, and so it's second nature and almost automatic, almost like a reflex in a way. That's almost what you want to kind of aim for, because if you do that, then you won't have to really think about it all the time because it's what you do all the time. Anyone else have anything to add?
I think some of your ability to be resilient comes from your knowledge of the standard. What are your options here? For example,
the structured flexibility,
adjustments to your schedule, or doing an extra simulated practice because someone's not getting it, or knowing what the parameters are that you can use that structured flexibility when you need to make adjustments.
Yep. Yeah, that high challenge, low threat, keeping that good stress. And a couple others had mentioned about the different types of learners and adjusting and adapting and not giving up, and then just reframing things to meet the students' needs is awesome. Excellent. All right, so we're going into what's your why, the motivation. So how do we inspire others, our coaches, trainers, students, and peers to have similar mindsets?
I think a certain amount of it is just having a kind of can-do attitude. If you're ready to throw in the towel at the first hiccup you run across, you're not going to be able to progress very much. But if you have a nature to be a problem solver, it encourages everybody around you to also be problem solvers. They kind of get caught up in fun of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Sarah, I would say model the behavior constantly.
Yep, being an example, a mentor.
Got it. Even students, I'm sure this happens to you. I live maybe in a smaller city than Chicago, but you'll run into students in grocery stores and stuff. And if they've had a positive experience, it's generally a positive interaction. If it's not, then of course, you're not going to have that positive interaction. So trying to model the behavior we're talking about here is very important.
Yeah, live in the walk and talk in the talk.
Exactly.
So do you think that finding and having a purpose in our rider coach or trainer work is a key component to our motivation?
This is Scott in Missouri. I believe you do. If you know what your goals are and the goals of the students, I look at always trying to be an encourager. I work in the IT field. Every time a problem comes up, you always hear people who are in IT, oh, I know nothing, I'm dumb. It's like, no, you just don't know anything about computers. You know, and you have to give them a thought process of, yeah, okay, I'm the rider coach. I don't know everything, but I'm going to do everything I can to help you progress to your goal. And, you know, they're going to make mistakes. Okay, but that's fine. Do it right the next time. You know, you can do this. Just practice what we're asking you to do. It's about being positive. We have those times when we have students that don't want to listen to us, and you still, I mean, to me, I still continue to preach it, I guess you could say, and try and get them to understand. You know, a lot of times they thank you afterwards when they pass. Well, all we did was encourage them and show them what they needed to do to accomplish the goal. They had to do the work. Right. They had to pass the writing and the written portion of the class. All we're there to do is facilitate, encourage, and help find, you know, little things to help them that maybe they aren't getting or understanding, but trying to put them back into a self-evaluation. And as rider coaches, we should always self-evaluate ourselves on how we're doing today, how are we coaching. I've even gone to other coaches when I've had a difficult student in the class. How can I get this across? Or do you have a better idea or suggestion for this person because they're not understanding what I'm saying? Because we all learn in different ways. And sometimes it's a word, a phrase that we get stuck on saying, maybe we need to change that. And sometimes talking to our rider coach or mentor, asking, well, what's another way I can put this in? And sometimes, you know, when they tell you and you do it, and it seems a light bulb comes on from the student. So, you know,
it's that moment of self-discovery where they realize that anything is possible as long as that's their goal, and they have the resiliency and tenacity and determination to do everything that's possible to get there. And then when they're met with a mentor and a facilitator who has the same goals, anything can happen. So, recipe for increased resiliency. So you first want to build the right connection. So prioritize those key relationships, join a group to further your development, such as this. Encourage wellness, take care of your body, your mind, avoid negative, unproductive outlets like gossiping, complaining. Believe in your ability to overcome hardships and guide your own destiny. Find purpose, help and mentor others, be proactive, move toward your goals, look for opportunities for self-discovery, seek healthy stress, use stress. Embrace healthy thoughts, keep things in perspective, accept change, be flexible and adaptive, maintain a hopeful outlook, learn from your past, and make adjustments. So these are all kind of a summary of different ways to increase your overall resiliency. And then kind of brings me to the why of the tribe. So here are some reasons why we have this tribe. It's because it does enhance your efforts, social support and advice, helps develop the resilience, provides motivation, improves your self-view, improves your performance, and helps you to deal with stressful situations. So this is extremely important and very valuable outlets. So here are some key takeaways. Realize that resiliency is a mindset, growth, and/or infinite. It relies heavily on self-reflection and motivation. When practiced and challenged regularly, it becomes second nature and reflexive. And it grows best when there's a long-term goal in sight. So, all right, well, thank you all very much for your attention. And if you have any other last-minute questions, I appreciate it.
Good job, Sarah.
All right, thank y'all.
Lots of claps and thumbs up for Miss Sarah. really great topic. I appreciate your insight on this. You certainly have great grasp of it. And thank you for being a part of the tribe. Next, we're going to go to Ted. Are you ready, brother?
Sure. Okay. I assume that all of us have a rider coach that we work with that we would really prefer they would shut up once in a while. So we're going to do this little segment, kind of looping back around to overcoaching. I will declare that exercise 9 is off limits because I believe that was beat to death. So did my share come up?
Yes, it did.
Okay, just a couple of small slides to get the conversation going. And I'm going to solicit every bit of input we can out of you guys. So in overcoaching, there's obvious overcoaching and subtle overcoaching, things that we wouldn't think about or some people don't really think is overcoaching. Anybody care to share some ideas?
Dennis here in St. Louis, one thing for me on overcoaching I've learned over the years I've been teaching, I learned that you really want to only say 1 or 2 things to a student, mostly positive, then send them on their way. Because if you start getting into a long, drawn-out, paragraph, it's going to take too long. They're going to forget half of what you said.
Okay.
Jeff in Massachusetts. One of the early experiences a fellow rider coach was having with overcoaching, I tried to encourage him to give the students a little bit of time at the beginning of each exercise to try and figure out for themselves what their difficulty was, and let them, sort of fumble around, as Ray has said in the past, with things.
Okay, let's think about this from the high level. Just types of overcoaching. One idea is adding words to the cards, things that I have to tell all my students. Along that nature, what other types of just generalized overcoaching do we see? In essence, categories.
Well, my favorite, and I mean that sarcastically, is the sentence that begins with, in my experience riding.
Good. Anything else?
I got one, Rich from New York.
Yes, sir.
One is after you read the cards, then you do the overview. And the overview of what you just read on the cards takes way longer than reading the cards.
Great. Anything else?
When you start coaching what they already should be doing, or coaching what they are going to be doing next, coach what is in front of you, what they're supposed to, the skill that they're doing now. Not
okay.
Coaching a skill that they are going to be developing more later.
Great. Anybody else got something?
Yeah, I think overcoaching contradicts the formula of OCR, of the acronym OCR in our guide.
Okay.
I have seen coaches who will coach students on how to do something they just did adequately and met the objective for.
Without letting it sink in. Okay, let's move on to subtle overcoaching. Some things that we may do that we don't think of as actually coaching or overcoaching, or the potential for.
I see coaches a lot of times. I'll use exercise 4 as an example. The goal is shifting and stopping, but they spend a lot of time coaching the corner, and it's just a little misdirected on what we're shooting for right at that moment.
Okay.
Talking to the students about motorcycles. Talking to the students about motorcycle stuff when they're on break.
Thank you. Is that coaching? Is that when we need to be coaching?
It may be when we need to not be coaching.
Their downtime. How many of you have coaches that head straight for the break area so they can tell students about their recent trip?
Sometimes I'll have to admit I've done that probably myself once or twice.
Okay, what about if a student asks a question and we decide to give them the full dump of our knowledge? How many of you have seen that?
I agree, because I have had a student ask me a question on break. Yes, I give him an answer, but I try not to elaborate too much on it.
Good. How many of you have seen other coaches that just, somebody says, how's a clutch work? They start naming parts and fluid viscosities and.
Oh, sure.
Wet versus dry.
Yeah, they talk about the coefficient of friction, and you're just like, what? Like, where is that? That's not in here. You just have to redirect them.
Sounds like an engineer might do something like that, Sarah.
We would always
Not
go
their darts.
to the coach that was the engineer. Go talk to him, he'll tell you.
Guilty as charged.
Okay. Anybody else have any other types of overcoaching? Let's flip into the next one. Whoops, that helps to get over to the screen. What negative effects can overcoaching cause?
We could overload our students.
And what happens then?
They can shut down, and they aren't as receptive to learning.
Okay.
It invites a loss of focus.
It
One of the
could
worst
also
things.
make the student feel uncomfortable or self-conscious.
Also takes away from the students' time to be thinking and reflecting and working on that particular skill when a rider coach has to keep imparting their knowledge on those poor people.
Well, in riding, people get a lot more out of actually riding sometimes than hearing us talk.
Great point.
So you could even take away from a student's sense of accomplishment. If they finally shifted into second gear, but you're telling them, keep your eyes up, blah, 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 you've taken away from their sense of accomplishment from achieving the goal.
Good. Picking on engineers, we've had a couple of instances where we've overloaded those with tips that they just keep stacking up in their head. So releasing the clutch becomes 300 operations in their mind and they drive off in the field. Anybody else have anything?
This is Michelle in Ohio. You can also make students dependent on what you do and what you coach. Well, they wait for you to tell them to do X or tell them to do Y before they go ahead and do it.
Good. Okay. Donna's going to break us up into groups. What we want to do is discuss and return with a method to curb your coworker or yourself from overcoaching. And if you care to share examples of what you've seen go wrong or people that you've tried to work on getting away from overcoaching, what those methods are. So Don, you there?
Yes, I am. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
How long are we going to be in groups for, Ted?
I don't know, 6-7 minutes.
All right, gotcha. All right, here we go. Into our groups.
He was trying to keep us from overcoaching.
All right, so who cares to share what you had for your epiphany in your groups?
Ted, I don't know if it's an epiphany, but I took notes for group 7. I think the best suggestion I heard was from Mr. Sears in Massachusetts. And apparently the state has what they call a lead instructor and I guess a co-instructor. And he said the lead timekeeper basically says, hey, the exercise is over, and that kind of has the effect of shutting down the chatterbox that needs to be shut down.
Okay.
It's Mark in Arizona, and I was in group 5, and we had a couple ideas. One was when overcoaching was happening during an exercise, things were too extensive, and the method was possibly trying to challenge the other coach to keep things more brief, to stick to the cards, see how it works, not adding any extra information from their experience. And the other situation was dealing with coaches who spend their time enlightening students during breaks. And it was just trying to distract that coach, call them over to another task, or in some way break off their connection with the students who are supposed to be among themselves rather than with us.
We had that same discussion, Mark.
Carol, I kind of took notes for group number 8. A couple of things that we talked about was pay attention to the length of the line for yourself. And that way you know if you're over or under coaching possibly. And also talk with your fellow instructor at the break. And two things with that is, one, that way you know what each other is expecting, what you're expecting of each other. And two, if your fellow coach is overcoaching, you can ask them learner-centered questions and get them to realize it for themselves. That's something that Chris brought up to us, which was a really good point. So those are some of our notes.
Great. Anybody else?
One thing we brought up in our group was communication prior to actually teaching the class, especially if you hadn't talked with somebody in a while. The other one is, what we do is we give this signal to open hands, so you're preaching too much. So it's easily recognized and people move on. They try to get the message. It works.
In our group, Rita had a couple of cute hand signals that she says she uses with co-rider coaches to communicate out of students' line of sight when someone is overcoaching. Another idea that came up in our group was to rely more on nonverbal coaching to help curb your overcoaching tendencies, and then keeping things just down to 1 or 2 bullet points for students.
Are you going to share Rita's signals?
Thank you, Carol, for asking.
Yeah, I'll let Rita do that. I didn't catch them both.
So this is button it up. And then if your co-coach is going down rabbit holes.
Nice, Rita. I like it.
Is that it?
That's great.
Wait, my screen said wrong to clap. I can't clap.
In our group 9 chat, one of the tips was just to politely interject to get you back to the task at hand, whatever that is. And then also referred out here was in another statement was the quick tip to riders to curb your overcoaching. Keep those sentences quick and sweet. 3 to 5 words, 7 words, whatever the magic number is.
In our group, we were in group 1. A lot of the same thing we've echoed that everyone else had mentioned before. Another thing is for the chronic overcoacher that you've talked to and they still don't do it. One thing that that we do, or I do, is we'll time them with a stopwatch, and just every single time a student comes, and then document, and then show them, and ask them a question like, how many seconds do you think it takes you to coach when a student comes to a stop? They're like, oh, 3 to 5 seconds. No, actually it took you 25, 40 minutes. And then showing them the actual hard data. It's like, you got to stop this. We need to find a better way of doing this. Less is more. 3 to 5 words. Let's see if we can do it.
That was a great suggestion from in our group, Sarah B. I'm looking forward to timing that guy who I couldn't get to zip it a bit, and seeing all of the minutes wasted on them listening, on the students listening to this guy yap on. It's a great idea. I appreciate it.
I wonder if you
Sometimes
found
if I'm
that
going to get rid of the demo, I just start the bike.
And rev it up a bit? Is that what you're saying?
I just started up.
I wonder
Hey,
if that timing won't backfire, though. I mean, what's
You
your
hear that
experience
bike
been
start
with?
up, you're running long.
One of the things that we talked about too was once you read the cards, you don't need to read the evaluation things. Those should come out as the demo is being performed. And one of the things I brought up is a good set of rider coaches, they don't have to give the demoing coach a cue. They just talk to what the demoing coach is doing.
Right.
And that way it flows, I think, a lot smoother.
Anybody else?
Well,
Yeah.
No,
Sorry.
you go ahead first, Ray.
Okay, Ray Gallen here. I'm not sure what group number I was in, but anyway, we one item we did talk about was having polite conversations with our co-instructor during non-teaching times, which is helpful. Also, I shared a little bit about some approaches that I take from trainer and for the years that I was coordinating. You know, sometimes somebody overcoaches because of a passion that they have and they just want to try to do it right. It's not like that they're trying to be intentionally annoying, but they have a purpose. And I have found that most of the times they may not understand or trust the curricula. And I've often tried to teach or coach new coaches, new instructors to learn how to trust the curriculum and understand that during the early exercises, you are working on specific components or some type of talents that they're going to be putting together later. So I'll challenge them to say, let the student develop and just work on these little things. And then at the appropriate time, teach the appropriate lesson. And then as you get later on in the course, say, hey, show the examples. Hey, look at this. They're actually slowing down at the appropriate time. They're applying the brakes correctly because you focused on something earlier and now it's coming together. So again, I encourage them to trust the curriculum and teach only that component that needs to be taught. And almost like they're an actor in a play or somebody on the assembly line assembling something, and all the pieces are put together and then they come together later. I find that people understand, once they understand that, they're not overcoaching as much.
Great. Somebody else was chiming in?
Group 4 was the last group that didn't participate here. Not to call them out or anything, you know.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute and I thought I was, and then I heard you start talking, Don, sorry. So Tony from Connecticut shared a good suggestion that we take a moment with the coach that we're trying to help them rein it in and give them some positive feedback about what they are doing right, and then share some insight as to what's going on with the overcoaching, and then give them some space to process that and hopefully be able to follow up and evaluate that what we suggested was helpful.
Great. Anyone else? So a couple things that we've used over the last couple of years. We try to bring one thing in a year generally, and I think 2 years ago we did keychains that said 1.5 tips. Thinking on, if you have a tip, you got the big one, you got a small one, and you're done. Send them on their way so you don't confuse them. I don't know that it's had a lot of effect, but if people are carrying their range keys on it and occasionally look at it, it might help. To say 2 tips, that's too full, that becomes 3 or 4. So a tip and a half, that becomes 2, maybe 2.5. You know how it works. The other thing that we've tried to get out to the field is a rider coach parking lot. Many of you have used parking lots in the classroom, but what we've encouraged is our long-winded coaches who just have to tell people certain items, or if somebody asks them a question, not to dishonor it, but to write it in a notebook, stick it back in their pocket, and after eval 5, they can cut loose with any information they feel like dumping out there. But that keeps the students safer. So just something to consider. It seems to be working for a few of us. I don't know how widespread it's gone, but some ideas. So any other comments from anybody? Little closing note here. Just something to ponder. And that's all I had for today.
Round of applause for Ted. I'm always amazed at the information that flows from this group. With that, speaking of good information or possibly good questions, how you doing tonight, Ray?
Doing great, enjoying myself.
Anything for the group?
Just a quick question. You probably saw that AIM Expo moved to January, weekend of January 21 to 23. So the question is, do you think MSF should do an IRETS in Columbus again? Or do you think we should do an RRETS instead of having a full-blown IRETS?
Great, Dennis here in St. Louis. You know, I heard a couple stories that there was an RRETS going to be held in various parts of the country, like St. Louis in November. Now, yes, if you do an IRETS in Columbus again, I'll be honest, that works for me because that's a 6-hour ride up there for me on the highway.
I think the IRETS is a good idea because if you do an RRETS, then you see the same people that you're with all the time. The IRETS, you get to participate with people from across the United States.
I have to agree with Nicole on that one wholeheartedly. You get more people.
I would love an IRETS. It's been a while since I've been able to attend one.
Yeah, I would second everyone else, and I would say IRETS would be awesome. I truly enjoy just being around everybody and having the opportunity to sit and discuss in the side conversations and all the different sessions. It's extremely valuable, and I'm sure everyone really appreciates it. So I know it's a lot of work, but if there's anything we can do, not volunteering everybody, we really do appreciate it.
I will admit I do like the IRETS a lot more than the RRETS because, like Sarah just said, there's a lot more coaches there. What is it, a couple hundred I think we see usually? I don't know how many there are in the country, which, yeah, we'll never see every one of them there, but we get a majority of them that works too.
I've been to an RRETS. I've not had the opportunity to go to IRETS, but from what I've heard from other people who've gone, there are a lot more topics that are able to be discussed at the IRETS in a little more depth than can happen at the RRETS.
And Nicole, you get to pick and choose what you want to go to.
Okay, I'll take from that. It looks like IRETS is preferred. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ray. Once again, we have a little poll. So the poll has been launched. 2 questions tonight. I'm not going to read the answers. I'll read the questions. I apologize if you can't see them. But the first question is, a particular physical action is best learned by. And then the second question is, part to whole practice isn't recommended because. So I'll give you a few minutes to read through. Some of those are a little bit long tonight, I understand, but I trust you. You got this. We're at about 80% voted. %, and more than likely that seems to be it. Several people that are on mobile devices may not have this option tonight. And I will end the polling at this point and share the results. What I will say is I kind of shortchanged you on this. Some of what I typed didn't come up. For the first question, it was practicing a number of tasks in randomized order, which would have been a better answer had I typed it all in there. So as a backup, repetition and reinforcement is probably the best answer. And then for number 2, %, practicing a part changes the motor programming when it's used in the whole is the correct answer. So that is it for tonight. I'll leave this up for a few seconds more.
Hey, Don, if I may, towards Ray, and one thing about IRITs, if you decide to have one, to me, the sooner we know about it, the sooner we can plan for it.
Agree.
And here we go with the wrap up. I want to thank Sarah and Ted tonight for reflecting on resiliency and overcoaching and possible solutions, as well as everybody that joined into the groups and provided such great answers. And as usual, Dr. Oakes for giving us the opportunity to answer a question. A parting thought, and this goes back to something that Sarah said a little bit earlier when she was talking about the infinite mindset. One thing that the infinite mindset is, when you're with a group of people, you can either be in competition with them or you can be inspired with them. And so tonight I want to let you all know that I'm inspired by you every time we come into this room, because I hear so many great things, great ideas, and the sharing of the knowledge. And I think that comes from people with growth and infinite mindsets. So applause for everybody tonight for participating. Really enjoy our time together. It means a lot. Let me see if I can get this to work again. Got a really good flash there. And of course it's not working. Next week, Miss Laura, are you still here? I can't win. I'm hitting all the wrong buttons.
I am still here, yep.
What are you doing next week, Miss Laura?
What am I doing next week? Finding washers for level 2 classroom. Doesn't everybody understand that?
No, I do not.
Good. I'll keep you in suspense until we see you again next Sunday.
So I got to wait a week to find out. Thanks, Laura. Appreciate that.
Isn't that awesome? And then, of course, Mr. Dave, how are you? Dave Halen? You still with us, or have you departed the room?
My unmute button didn't seem to be working. I think I got it going now. Can you hear me?
Don't you hate that? Now we got you.
Okay,
all right.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to talk about the writing skills test and some of the more challenging things that have occurred to you in your writer coach careers. I'll have a few to share, and hopefully others do as well.
All right. So next week's Tribe Talk will be on the, anybody got a calendar, 24th?
Yeah, that's correct, John.
24th.
24th.
As of now, we're planning at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the reason is, so far the polling from happy hour on Wednesday seems to put us right back in the same spot. And since we go over a little bit, it kind of works best for East Coast through the West Coast. If there are any trends, I'll let everybody know as I calculate the totals. However, it looks like we're going to stay at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we are now until something changes. Anybody got last minute bits to put out to everybody else?
I got a question for you, Don.
Go ahead, Mike.
How do I get the email for the links for these directly instead of relying on the email from my site administrator?
Okay. I need to get you on the email list. I just wrote your name down.
Okay.
And I'll contact you one way or the other. Do you have your email so that I can see it?
I have no idea.
Yeah, maybe reach out to me through Facebook or at don.green@riderchoices.com.
Okay.
And I'll get you on.
All right, thank you.
And the same way with anybody out there, if you're receiving the emails or the notifications in a roundabout way, all you got to do is reach out to me and I'll get you added to the mailing list. You'll get an email the day before with the link that drops you into this. Or, of course, you can go to Facebook.
Thanks again for another great Tribe Talk. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, Dennis.
Don?
Yes.
7 o'clock standard time is 6 o'clock, 1 hour earlier next week. You sure you meant to say standard time?
No, he said Eastern.
He said Eastern, yeah.
Eastern Standard, not Eastern Daylight.
We're currently on daylight time.
All right, so we're daylight time. We're on Eastern time for the engineers.
Okay, so 7 p.m. daylight. Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Same bat time, same bat channel.